Hello, Dr. Ruth.
Hello there, Katie. You look adorable. Get up so that everybody sees the jumpsuit. Turn around. I love it.
Thank you very much. It's
Okay.
very comfortable.
Very
It's
nice.
one size fits all, so it's very loose and relaxing and
Nice.
comfortable. How are you?
I'm very, very good.
You are
I'm
amazing,
glad to see
Dr.
you.
Ruth. You're 91 years old now, right?
Soon.
Soon.
On June 4th.
On June 4th.
Right.
Well, happy birthday
Thank you.
early.
Thank you.
And you're busy as ever. We have so much to talk about. First of all, there's a new documentary out about you called Appropriately Dr. Ruth.
Ask Dr. Ruth.
Ask Dr.
Yes.
Ruth, and it's really your life story from the time you were a little girl to your life today in many ways. And I'm curious what it was like for you to see your life unfold on the big screen and to see your extraordinary history just out there for everyone to see.
So first, when Rafi Marmor, the producer from Los Angeles, approached me, I said, no, thank you. I have done so much television, as you know.
Yeah.
I have done the BBC television. I said, no, thank you. He sent me a film he made. His film was called No Place on Earth. And that resonates with me because during World War II, I really thought there's no place in the world for me. And I watched a few other films. I said, okay, I'll do it. Then he hired Ryan White, who is a wonderful filmmaker. And I met and I said, very nice, because I can talk about some things from the past and I can talk about what I'm doing now. And they were wonderful. They were very hardworking.
Well, you know, I felt like I knew a lot about you, but there's so much about you,
That
Ruth,
you didn't know.
that I didn't
I
know,
know,
or
but-
that I didn't remember, honestly.
Or that you didn't know, because I'm not, since I talk a lot about sex, I not often, only very seldom did I talk really about the experiences of my life.
Right.
But here I did it, and I have to tell you, Kitty, that the animation worried me. I thought, what do you mean animation? They're going to make me look like Pinocchio or Mickey Mouse?
Yeah.
It is beautiful, because if you remember, there is a scene that my mother and grandmother, when I was 10 and a half, came with me to the railroad station in Frankfurt.
And sent you off to
And sent
Switzerland.
me to Switzerland, otherwise I wouldn't be alive. Now, in the scene, it looks as if they are alone on the whole railroad station. Not so. There were the other mothers and grandmothers, but it permits me to talk about loneliness. The way I felt when I was a child, when they sent me to a children's home that became an orphanage. And right now I'm doing Sex for Dummies, a new issue for the Millennials, and one chapter is about loneliness.
Loneliness.
And another chapter is about the art of conversation, getting lost. Because everybody, all of you young people, are sitting
true.
with the iPhone. So that's one thing. The other thing is that I felt very strongly that I have to stand up and be counted for those people, Katie, who say the Holocaust never happened. And I have to say those deniers are wrong, because I know better.
It is so infuriating that there is a strain of the public that suggests that I just, it's incomprehensible to me.
Not only that, I'm a board member of the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust. We right now, as you and I speak,
Has an exhibit about Auschwitz.
you know it.
I
And it's
know.
called Not Long Ago, Not Far Away. And it's a very upsetting exhibit. There is a cattle car outside the building, and that's where they, not only Jews, also gypsies, also homosexuals, also people with physical disability or mental disability, but mainly Jews. I need people like you to go twice. Once you're going to be very upset, because it's an upsetting exhibit, but it has to be shown. Also for those people who have Holocaust fatigue, who say, stop talking about it, it's like the Civil War, it's a long time ago. And then you have to go one more time. I went already twice. I learned about the history of how Nazis came to power that I did not know.
You know, a couple of years ago, my husband John and I traveled to Berlin, Budapest, and Hungary, and I said, I really want to go to Auschwitz. My mother was Jewish, so I'm half Jewish, and according to Hebrew law, I am Jewish.
No question.
Even though I was raised a Presbyterian,
And for me, you can be a Presbyterian and a Jew.
And I felt it was so important, Dr. Ruth, to bear witness. So we went to Auschwitz, and I saw so much, and I learned so much, obviously in Berlin as well, about what happened when Hitler rose to power. So I couldn't agree with you more. And I think what we haven't talked about, which people watching this probably don't know, is that your dad was taken to the concentration camps.
He first was taken to a labor camp in November of 1938. Then there were no concentration camps yet. The Nazis, as you saw in the film, the Nazis came to the apartment in Frankfurt and took him, and when he went downstairs, he turned around, he saw me at the window, and he smiled. I am sure that he was horrified of what would happen to him, but then he sent a postcard that in order for him to be able to come back to Frankfurt from the labor camp, I have to be with that Kindertransport with a group of children that went to Switzerland. I didn't want to go, but I had no choice. He really came back to Frankfurt for another year and a half, and then they were deported, and it's very sad. So I show in the movie, and people say they came to laugh, because I talk a lot about, the subject.
Right, of course.
That many years ago you already talked with me on television about. And so they actually gave me life twice. Once when I was born, and once when they sent me to safety. They sacrificed to send their only child to safety, and they never made it. They were all killed during World War II.
You were 10 and a half when they sent you to Switzerland.
Right.
And your mom and grandmother continued to write you letters.
And the father, when he came back, he wrote poems.
But then suddenly they stopped.
Suddenly, because they were taken to Lodz, that's Litzmannstadt in Poland, and from there to Auschwitz. My mother, which I'm showing especially for young people watching your program, there you can see in the documentary that I take the filmmaker to a museum called Yad Vashem
In Jerusalem.
in Jerusalem. And I wanted to show that there is a computer that actually you can follow. You press in the name of your relatives, and then it says what happened to them, because the Nazis kept track of that. Interesting. I knew some of it, but I wanted to show it so that people, young people, should know that there is a record kept. For my mother, it said when she was born, and then it says a word, if you remember from the movie, the word in German is verschollen, V-E-R-S-C-H-O-L-L-E-N, which means disappeared. They don't know where she is. That's one of the reasons that I'm so pleased that we have the exhibit now at the Museum of Jewish Heritage, because it's like a grave for my parents who don't have graves. But then I also talk about sex. So people should.
I know, but before we get off the Holocaust, I know that, so your parents have died, you're in Switzerland, and you're pretty much all alone in the world.
And the question was where to go. Because there was no question we couldn't stay in Switzerland, the whole group. After every 6 months, we had to get a stamp from the police in that village, Heiden, where the orphanage was, to give us 6 more months in Switzerland. So I became an ardent Zionist. I still am. I didn't think that I would live in New York, in America. I thought I would live in then Israel, where I fought.
So you all might not know this, I'm sure you don't, but Dr. Ruth was actually a sniper in the Israeli army.
In the forerunner of the IDF, of the Israel Defense Forces.
Wow.
And I can I don't do it, but I can still put 5 bullets in a red circle. I'm fortunate. I'd never had to kill anybody, but I could have if I had to. And then it shows in the film that I can still put a Sten gun together, and then I got very sad because I said, who knows how many people were killed with that gun. And then as you saw, I was badly wounded.
Right, and they thought they thought they were going to have to amputate both your
Both
legs.
my legs. Luckily, a brilliant physician fixed me, so I became a super good skier, a black diamond skier, and I can still, even though I'm 91, I can still dance the whole night, but I need a partner.
Well, what about that? I mean, I know you were so in love with your husband, Freddie, who passed away what year,
20
Doug?
years, 87.
87. You were married, though, for 30 years,
Right.
yes?
Almost 40.
And have you had any romances since Freddie?
Next question, please.
Really? Dr. Ruth, I never knew there was a question you wouldn't answer.
Next question.
Okay.
I did say in the end of the film, while the credits are running, I said there are 2 things that you will never know, not even my good friend Katie. One is how much money I have, and one with whom I'm sleeping.
All right. Well, you know, I think I want to respect both of those wishes, and I think they're totally appropriate. So, you know, the film goes on to talk about you lived in Israel, then you moved to Paris, yes?
Right.
And
I was 5 years in
and
Paris.
you were studying in Paris, and your first husband, you were a little bored. He wanted to go back to Israel.
That was husband number 2.
Number 2. The first
The
husband
first
was
one,
in.
He was David. He wanted to go back to Israel.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to study at the Sorbonne. Second one was handsome, Dan, and I had a little girl, so I married him.
Yeah.
And then we separated, and I gave him a car, an old car, and I kept the child. And then that was the real marriage. Fred Westheimer was the real marriage, and he comes. He showed up in the movie like really smelling like roses. Remember when he was happy to play with my son Joe?
Yes.
With the railroad, he jumps up and down for joy.
And in fact, he was captain of the Jewish ski team.
Right.
And when you met him, you knew right away that you were going to marry him.
Because he was short. He was 35. He was an engineer. He was cute looking. And I already knew that he was not married. I had been married twice. I didn't say that right away. The girl with whom I shared the room after skiing, her name was Vera, and she said, that guy is mine. Keep your hands off. And I didn't respond. I just said, let's see. And I married him within a year.
Whatever happened to Vera?
And Vera remained a good friend.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice, especially since you won the prize.
I won the prize, but I invited her to all the parties.
But you know, I think you've had such an interesting, obviously, educational journey, studying at so many places, getting your doctorate, I guess, when you were 42?
Yes.
42 years old.
Very good.
Yeah, and I have a very good short-term memory. Don't ask me any of these questions tomorrow, but you're so accomplished and have done so much, and now you've told me you're writing, you have 2 books coming
It's
out.
coming out now. One is a redo.
The Sex for Dummies.
The Sex for Dummies is being redone
Uh-huh.
for the Millennials, and where I talk about the art of conversation getting lost, and where I talk about loneliness. And then the other book is about diversity for children. It's called Crocodile, You're Beautiful. And so...
It's a children's book?
It's a children's book. And I have one book that has something to do with my experiences as a child, and it's called Roller Coaster Grammar.
Roller Coaster Grandma?
Yeah, it's a graphic novel for children 8 through 12. And that one, I talk about my childhood, and I talk about having been an orphan, but I also talk about that as a grandma, I went with 2 of my 4 grandchildren to an amusement park, and I show in the book, I talk about, we were measured to go on a ride. They could go on and I'm too short.
That's funny.
So I'm combining the sadness of my life at the same time to show the joy, the joie de vivre, the joy, and my delight with 4 grandchildren. Right now, this weekend, my granddaughter Leora is graduating from Barnard with cum laude. She has like 3 digits missing to 4.0. Amazing. And I'm right now going to all of the graduation parties.
Oh, how nice.
But I took time out to talk to my friend Katie.
Thank you, and I'm so grateful for you. So let me ask you a couple quick questions about sort of what's happening in the world today, Ruth. You mentioned millennials and young people. It's shown, there was an article in The Atlantic that said young people are having less sex. And there seems to be kind of a interesting phenomenon going on with less sex, but then the whole hookup culture and dating apps. It's so different than it was when you were growing up and when I was growing up.
That's true. However, I tell them terrible. I tell them nonsense. In the olden days, when immigrants came to the city of New York and the women worked in the garment industry, they worked many more hours than our millennials do. So that it's an excuse that I don't accept.
What, you think they're saying that they're working too hard to have sex?
They say they're working too hard.
Uh-huh.
But on the other hand, I'm not against dating because I don't want people to be lonely. But be smart. Don't meet somebody in a dark alley. Meet in a lobby of a hotel. Use
You
the
mean
apps.
With the dating apps,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And then put it away. Don't have it in front of you while you talk to somebody.
It seems like though, people are so available with the dating apps. It's like you can be so like, you just swipe and you get rid of them and swipe there. I think it's a reminder, there are a million people you could go out with. Does it keep people from bonding and having an intimate relationship because they're constantly exposed to all these other people who are available?
Not only that, they always think more now than ever before that there might be a Prince Charming on a white horse around the corner. Instead of saying, here's somebody who's interesting, let me see if I can develop a relationship. So we have a lot of things to discuss about these things.
And what advice would you give? My 27-year-old daughter's engaged, which is exciting.
Congratulations!
Thank you. And
You're going to dance at the wedding?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You have to come. It would be so fun.
All right, invite
And
me.
my 23-year-old doesn't have a boyfriend right now. But what advice would you give sort of millennials? We have a lot in our office.
I saw that.
And what advice would you give them about finding a partner? Because there have been other studies that have shown millennials are in many ways postponing life and waiting a long time, having fewer children, waiting to get married, and actually entering middle age at a stage where they're not quite as advanced as we were.
Right. So what I say to millennials is it's okay to be choosy. It's okay to find somebody who has the same interests. It's okay to be with somebody that is not boring. But don't overdo that. Find somebody that has some interest that you can actually develop some interests together. And the main thing is that I do want to combat this loneliness. And I want to tell young people, you don't have to settle with the first date that you find on your app. But also don't wait until you can't have babies anymore. Because I could not have envisioned my life without my son and daughter and without now 4 grandchildren.
I think a lot of women mistakenly believe that they can have children well into their late 30s and 40s when biologically it becomes increasingly difficult. So I think that's one thing that people, is just a biological fact. And while there's IVF and other methods, they have to be at least realistic about that.
Not only that, one has to stand up to be counted, to say there is a reason why people should have babies at a young age, because later on, not only is it more complicated, not only is it more difficult, but it's also later on, it's more difficult to manage professional life. You can do that when you are young. And
It's exhausting.
and motherhood, right?
Yeah.
So I was very lucky. I always worked part-time. I worked for Planned Parenthood. I worked always something to keep my interest in the world alive. But at the same time, I also raised two wonderful children.
Speaking of Planned Parenthood, Dr. Ruth, I know that your openness about sexuality has been credited. People credit you and your openness about sexuality with making, leveling the playing field for women in a lot of different ways. And I'm curious how you feel about these abortion laws that are now being passed in states like Georgia, Alabama, Missouri, Mississippi, and that are very, very restrictive, even in the case of rape or incest, prohibiting abortion. And what are your thoughts on that?
Katie, usually I don't talk about politics. Like everybody knows, I vote. Since I'm an American citizen, I've always voted. But I don't talk about politics. I don't talk about specific politicians either. However, these days, I make an exception. These days, I tell everybody how sad I am when I see children being separated from parents. That was my story. How terrible. Then I stand up to be counted that if abortion becomes illegal again, terrible. Only women with money will be able to get an abortion. The others will use an abortionist, coat hangers. Terrible. Even people who are responsible, who use contraception, very often there is a contraceptive failure. And I'm very, very sad, and I'm very sad about Planned Parenthood not getting the funds that they need in order to educate, in order to talk about contraception, in order to talk about how not to be pregnant when you don't want to be pregnant. So these three things I do talk about.
What would you say to people, and I hear from them on my social media feeds, who feel that abortion is tantamount to murder?
I don't waste a moment, like I said in the film. I don't waste my time about even discussing it with people like that. I just move on and say we have to make sure that abortion has to remain legal, and we have to make sure that people who have a contraceptive failure can obtain an abortion, period.
Why are reproductive rights so critically important for women in your view?
Because for some women, when there is a contraceptive failure, this is not what they want at that moment in time, which is a big problem for the woman, for her partner, and for that child. Every child should be a wanted child, and not just because there was a contraceptive failure, a condom who broke.
Why do you think the country is moving in this direction, or at least some states seem to be?
If I would know that, I would run for president.
Would you ever consider it?
No.
What do you
Not even with you together.
What do you think about the state of the country? It seems like there is so much anger, frustration, resentment, and vitriol that is coursing through the veins of Americans today, and it makes me so sad. And I'm curious why you think this has bubbled up so much.
I don't have an answer, but I like the way you are saying it. That it bothers you, and that it's bubbling up, and it really colors everything that we are doing. So I have to take a deep breath, and I have to say, look at my life. And it shows very nicely in the Ask Dr. Ruth. And look how happy I am these days. Hitler and his cronies are dead, and my 4 grandchildren are wonderful. You have to accentuate the positive.
So you think that good will prevail?
Yes, I'm a big optimist. Thank you.
That's great. All right, before we go, can I ask you a couple sex questions? We
Yes.
got some sex questions from our viewers, audience, social media followers. No names.
No
I
last
told them,
names.
no names, no first names
Right.
even. I'm 53, I've been married to my husband for 30 years, and I have zero, nada, zip. No desire to have sex with him. We're like roommates. We're comfortable. When he hugs me, I feel like we're just going through the motions. The thought of being intimate is never in my thoughts, ever. And then in all caps, she says, what is wrong with me?
Right now, Katie, tell her.
Here, you tell her, she's watching.
Right now, please go and see a psychotherapist, because there are other issues that have nothing to do with sex. There are issues of other in your relationship. You are angry at something, your mother-in-law is interfering, your friends have more money, who knows what. Go and see a therapist. Don't just sit there and suffer.
Could it be a hormonal issue? You know, women's
I would say
hormones change so much as they age, as you know.
Wait.
Is that not right?
No, because, yes, it's right. But
Okay.
wait, I did a book called Sex After 50. So women have to know that after 50, about that time, they must use a lubricant before they engage in intercourse. Because if they have intercourse with a not well lubricated vagina, it's painful, and they're going to say who needs it. And men and women, after 50, should not have sex in the evening when they're tired. The testosterone level for men is highest in the morning. So in the book Sex Over 50, I tell people, after a good night's sleep, get up, go to the bathroom, have a small breakfast, and go back into bed. In the olden days, I used to say, hang off your phone. Right now, I say, just shut up, shut it off.
And take it out of the bedroom.
Right, and close the door, and engage in some good caressing and hugging and kissing. If there are problems in terms of lubrication, if there are problems of him not obtaining or maintaining an erection, go and see a sex therapist.
Someone asked, how did you become so comfortable and casual talking about sex, particularly in the era you grew up in? That just wasn't done.
Right. In the Jewish tradition, the word sex is ladat, which means to know each other. In the Jewish tradition, sex was never considered a sin. It was always an obligation of the husband with his wife. So all of you married people make believe that it's Friday night tonight and engage in some good sex. So I never had that problem.
Amen.
I never had the problem that it was considered dirty or
Inappropriate
inappropriate or not to be talked about. That has helped me greatly. And then I was very fortunate. I worked for Planned Parenthood. I was in the program Dr. Helen Singer Kaplan,
Right,
which you saw in the film.
right.
I
At
worked
Cornell?
At Cornell, I was with her for 7 years. 2 years, twice a week being trained. 5 more years to help to train other sex therapists. So I was very fortunate because I had the psychology background. I had a master's in sociology. And now, on top of all that, I got a fantastic training as a psychosexual therapist. I always use that word psychology also with it. It's not just the intercourse. It's the psychology and everything that has to do with the relationship.
Don't they say the most important organ?
Yes.
Maybe you say that,
I
Dr.
do.
Ruth, is your brain.
You listened very carefully. The most important organ is not between the waist and the knees, it's up in your brain, right there.
Is it better, someone wanted to know, is it better to look for companionship or love after 70?
Is it better?
To look for companionship or for love?
Both of it. Try to get both, but be smart. No sex in the evening when you're tired. Sex in the morning after a good night's sleep.
My husband and I have been married 4 years following the death of our longtime spouses. We're 75 and 77. He still has a strong sex drive but has ED, thereby causing frustration for him and just irritation for me. I don't understand why sometimes someone continues to want intimacy when he can't perform. He's tried different medications with no positive effect. I'm completely happy without intimacy.
Okay, but he's not happy. So if one is not happy, not good. You have to see a sex therapist. Erectile difficulty for him. First of all, he has to go to see a urologist to see if everything is okay. If a woman has pain during intercourse, she has to see a gynecologist because it might be something else that has nothing to do with the desire, with the wanting to have sex. But don't just put it on the side. Make sure you make an appointment with a medical expert.
Okay. What is a good lube for women who cannot take hormones? I never thought I'd be asking about lube to Dr. Ruth, but do you have any recommended ones?
What's a lube?
A lubricant.
I don't have a particular one. Call your gynecologist.
What do you do about lack of sex drive after menopause?
So no question that after menopause there are certain things that people have to know. That maybe the desire is less, but not to give up. Make an appointment with a sex therapist and ask that question. The nice thing would be to both of you to go.
Menopause feels so literal. Help. Menopause. That's funny. I guess a lot of people are having difficulty with menopause.
So menopause, people should be delighted that they are still alive, that they are still have the desire, hopefully, that there's no desire face dysfunction. And if there's any discomfort, visit a gynecologist.
Doesn't testosterone help with women? Because I know testosterone levels as you age decrease.
Katie, I would never speculate.
But that's something you could
I
ask
have no
her.
idea. Ask your doctor.
Okay.
But you should ask because it might be so.
Is Washington Heights a happening place?
Yes! Because it's not called Washington Heights anymore.
Yeah?
I'm telling it to you on your program. I live in my apartment for 55 years, and now it's called Hudson Heights.
Ooh.
You know what that means? It's right next, overlooking the Hudson, right next to Fort Tryon Park. I see the George Washington Bridge. I see the Tappan Zee Bridge. I see the Palisades. And now they gave it a new name, Hudson Heights.
Is it being invaded by hipsters?
Not
Do you
yet.
have young people coming there?
Yes, we have a lot of professionals coming.
Oh, good.
Lots of professionals.
And someone...
Even television people.
Really?
Yes. You can come to my building.
Well, I would love to come visit you. Can we have some kugel or something? And
I don't cook, but we can visit.
I'll bring the food.
You bring the food?
I'll bring the food. You provide the table. You would like my husband.
I bring a table. I tell you what I do. My table very often is filled with papers because I do so many books and so many things. When you come...
Are we going to eat in bed?
No. God forbid. However, I have a bridge table. I found a new trick. I move the bridge table out, I put the tablecloth on, and we're having a meal on the bridge table.
And so your table can stay as your desk.
Exactly.
I'm writing a book, and my dining room table is full of papers, too.
So take a bridge table and leave it empty. After I come to visit, fold it again, and you always have a surface.
I'm going to buy a bridge table, Dr. Ruth. My mom used to have a bridge. My mom used to have a bridge table. I didn't even think that people still had bridge tables.
I don't play bridge. The only thing I play, as you saw in the movie, Ask Dr. Ruth, which is going to be on Hulu.
I know, it is going to be on Hulu.
On Hulu as of
After it's
June
in the
1st.
theater.
As of June 1st.
Oh, that's great.
But you have to know that that bridge table saved my life the other day. So I used it already twice. Use it.
I will.
And I give you the tip for free.
Thank you, Dr. Ruth. All right, so do you have anything in closing to say to people who love you and have watched you or listened to you or read your books for years?
I would like people, and I'm not the only sex therapist, I would like people, if they have a problem, to go for help. That's really my important message. The books might give you an indication of what you should do, but not to be embarrassed to make an appointment with a health professional.
And why, and before we go, why is a healthy sex life so important to your overall health and your relationship?
Because I can tell you, when I walk through your hallways here, I can actually tell you who has had sex and who doesn't.
Really?
They walk
Should we do
different-
that?
I can. So watch out.
Well, why is it so important though?
So I'm not saying it's important every day of the week.
No,
of the
but
year.
I said a healthy
It's-
sex life.
Yes, it is important because it makes your whole outlook on life better. And it's important for the whole structure of the family. So I talk a lot about issues of family.
Well,
Thank you.
Dr. Ruth, thank you. Say bye to everyone who's been
Bye.
watching.
I hope you get an award. You will let me know.